Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of Ghost in the Shell, the live-action American adaptation. And with me today, as usual, Connor.
Hello.
Benny.
Hello.
We revisited the anime not too long ago, and you can check out our review for that as well. It's up online on our channels. And hey, now we've got the film. What did you guys think? Benny?
It looked great. It was okay. It was fine. It was, god damn it. It's just like so many of these reboots and adaptations and remakes, you're going to forget about it. You know, I'm going to chuck this in the RoboCop camp. It was fine.
For me, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was certainly better than RoboCop. I was always prepared for this to be somewhat different than the original. I think I mentioned this previously on our review that I don't think it would have translated well, or the original wouldn't have translated well to a live action. So considering that, I actually I did enjoy this film. As you said, it really did look spectacular. I think the special effects in this and the visuals of this is really good. The sound design as well. My criticism of it is that up until about maybe 40 minutes in, I felt like it was a little bit directionless. I just didn't feel like everything quite gelled together. And I think that might be one of the problems of preparing to review a movie where you get a little bit meta in your own mind. And I remember thinking about half an hour in, it was like, am I not enjoying this film? Like something seems to be missing.
Not a good sign.
Yeah, and it really worried me. It isn't a good sign. But when the kind of main conflict comes in with the character and there seems to be a more driving force and a more momentum behind the plot, from that moment on, I was down. I really enjoyed this film, and I was taken away with it.
Now, Connor, is it true? Is it true that you hate the original anime version?
It's not true. I simply don't think it's as good as everyone thinks it is.
This is an interesting companion piece to the anime. It's an interesting case study for Hollywood doing an adaptation and taking that source material and doing something kind of different with it, but also sticking pretty true to the original. There's a lot of scenes evoking the original. There's a lot of imagery that is sort of, frame for frame modeled off the original. But it's, at the end of the day, it looks great. It sounds great. But I definitely agree with you, Connor. There's a real lack of direction in the plot of this. The original anime can be criticized of that, but the aesthetic of the film is that kind of like meandering, washy, delve into the world kind of feel. And this one had more of a Hollywood aesthetic, and from the get-go, it's answering questions. This is your ghost. This is your shell. This is exactly what everything means. And the plot, it just doesn't come together, and the themes don't come together, and it's not nearly as poignant. It doesn't answer any of the questions even remotely, just throws out these themes and ideas. And
Are you talking about the live action?
The live action one.
See,
yeah.
I found that the exact opposite, because one of my major criticisms of the original was just a lot of monologues about what it is to be human and this kind of philosophical.
Yeah, but I think it sets itself up in that manner.
It
Whilst
does.
This one, it immediately from the get-go, it's like, okay, we need to tell everyone exactly what the ghost is. We need to tell everyone this, that, and the other. So it sets itself up differently from the anime to be answering questions.
Yeah.
And the anime is mysterious and sort of you've got to interpret the film. It's not just a here's all the answers, here you go, this is what it means to be human. And this one felt like it wanted to answer the questions, but it didn't, and it just felt very lackluster, and at the end of it, directionless.
Yeah, you brought it up, and it's a small thing, but it did bother me throughout the film, the way it felt very forced. They kept trying to refer to everything as ghosts and shells. It's like, we get it. Like, the title can just be a metaphor. It's fine. You don't need to keep shoving that down our throat.
But again, like the original was very much like that. The original, and
how about we judge this film on its own merits?
Because in our review, both of you were very much pro this whole, you just throw out ghost and shell and all these terms and stuff like that. You can't suddenly switch your opinions of it when it's applied to a live action.
I think it depends on what the film's trying to achieve and what it's setting itself up to do. And this one sets itself up in a different manner. But listen, let's get on to what we thought was good. The visuals. The visuals were great. I think we're all on the same page about that. So I thought the world looked amazing. Mm-hmm. The photography was amazing. The VFX was seamless. I think this is one of the best looking films I've ever seen. And Weta Workshop did all the production design and VFX. So, to be expected that it was going to look that great.
They've got a really good track record when it comes to producing visually stunning films. I thought that was really cool. You mentioned a lot of scenes that hark back to the old one that I just thought really kind of hit the nose on the head. That first scene,
crispy.
I love it when you hit the nose on the head.
Damn it! I can't actually talk.
Another Connerism for you.
Yeah.
I
Head on the nose on the fuck.
I think I disliked this movie most when it was really evoking the original film because it felt very shallow to me. Like it would take scenes wholesale from the anime, and it would put them up on screen, and they would look stunning. But the plot is so different in this movie, and it just wasn't doing the same thing at all. So it just made me kind of angry at this film. Not angry. I'm not even that fussed about it, but
clearly.
Yeah, but it just made me. It took me out of it, and every single time I was like, I kind of want to be watching the anime right now.
Did you feel like the plot stood on its own as a standalone film sci-fi narrative?
No, it felt very generic to me. They've stolen your past and your body and your. I don't know.
I actually thought they were going to do more with it. I thought they were going to take it somewhere a little bit more weird or do something a little more crazy.
I would have been happier with a more faithful adaptation of the original. Like, I loved that original story with the Puppet Master and everything.
But I will say that if maybe the story isn't great, I thought another great element of this film was Scarlett Johansson. I think she did an incredible job with the source material. There's not really that much to work with in this script, and she carved out a character in the way she moved. I loved her walk. I love the way she carried herself, and it seemed to be a good sort of live action representation of the Major, and also bringing something new to the table.
Yeah, I thought all the actors, including Scarlett Johansson, I thought she nailed it. But just the entire cast seemed to do really well in this film. I thought she was really excellent. And just, as you said, just full embodiment of the character. The walk, the style with which she spoke. Yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Michael Pitt was making some interesting choices in the film.
I wonder if that was his voice.
I don't think most of the cast had really anything to work with. All of the Section 9 kind of background characters were just sort of there. I actually really liked, there's no way I could say his name, the actor who played Bateau. I thought he was really fun.
I've got it here, Pilou Asbæk. I think he's from...
almost certainly wrong.
Yeah, 100%. He's from Denmark, but yeah, I think he did an amazing job.
Yeah, I thought his New York accent was a really good approximation of anime voiceover. That's about right.
It's kind of almost impossible to not compare it to the original, and I hate that I keep doing it, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the development, or a bit of a different take on the relationship between the Major and Bateau. I think that in the anime, you really get a sense that these guys are solid, really good friends. They really understand each other, and that relationship is one of the key highlights for that original film for me. They took a bit of a different route to this. There was a little bit, it felt a little bit more like an origin story, felt a little bit less like they were this kind of trusted team. It did come a little bit towards the end where you felt a little bit more camaraderie.
It wasn't nearly as poignant as the anime.
No,
you're right. They had each other's back, and in this one, it was like they were just kind of part of the Section 9, and they didn't have that camaraderie. I think another great performance was Takeshi Kitano, who played the chief.
Beat Takeshi, he was awesome.
Damn, what a badass!
So cool.
Yeah.
His scenes, he just owned the role, and just the general level of badassery was astronomically awesome.
Not to overstate it.
Yeah, I did hear a bit of a criticism that character is generally like this diplomatic badass, and that a lot of people didn't like the fact that he went out and started slinging this pistol. But to those people, I say, fuck off. That was awesome.
This film really needed something like that.
Don't send a rabbit to kill a fox.
Great line.
Yeah, the most engaged with this film I was at any point throughout was when Section 9 was all getting hunted, like they're all going to
Burned, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, now this movie's kind of revving up, and then it immediately diffuses.
I think we're getting into some spoiler territory now, so let's just give a little wrap up on non-spoilers. I think this film's great in its craft. The visuals are amazing. The camera work is incredible, but it really falters on a storytelling level, and it's a cool, interesting companion piece to the anime. This isn't Dragon Ball Evolution, this isn't a destructive adaptation of the anime, but it's very mediocre. I would say a very run-of-the-mill kind of adaptation. And as you said, I would compare this to RoboCop. I think that's a good comparison, because that's a bit of a meh. And am I going to revisit RoboCop now? I don't think so.
Yeah, look, I enjoyed this film. It does fall into the trap that a lot of sci-fis fall into, which is a lot of focus on that area and not quite as much focus on the plot. I still thought there was enough to keep me interested and to have me enjoy this film. And yeah, I would revisit this film. I think this is one that I'll own.
I can't really think of anything to recommend about this film. I'll have forgotten it by next week. It looks great. Don't watch it if you want anything more than that, really. Probably just stick to the original and hell, watch Standalone Complex.
Yeah, so let's get into some spoilers now. I think the first one that comes to mind is the Scarlett Johansson, the Major's race change in the film. So, there's all this controversy about whitewashing in the lead up to this film. And
PR nightmare.
And I think Scarlett Johansson really owned the role, and I can see exactly why they cast her. But then the film kind of does this thing later on where they explain that she was, transferred from another body into this shell, and there was a race change from Asian to Caucasian.
So they tackled it really head on. They actually made the whitewashing part of the plot, which is a bold way to go about it, I guess. And there's been some strong reactions to it. I think some people see it as a complete slap in the face, but it was very much a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I'll give them that.
Yeah, look, when the original casting, when the original kind of whitewashing allegations came up, I was caught between, I think we need a kind of movement towards getting a bit of diversity in leading characters in Hollywood. Having said that, this film would have started, from a studio point of view, would have started on the back foot. I mean, you're talking about a sci-fi film, like in a hard sci-fi film, which traditionally doesn't do as well, with the exception of the highest grossing film in the world. But yeah, on average, doesn't do as well. You're talking about an action film that has a woman lead, which again is something that I'm glad is coming more and more in Hollywood, but is still not like a staple of that genre. So you've got these kind of things that are already against this film. I think that when you look from a studio point of view at bankable women stars, your pool that you're drawing from is fairly shallow, which is unfortunate, but it is true. So Scarlett Johansson, I felt like, was the reasonable choice, and she did nail it. I thought that was really good. You are right that later on, and when we find out that there is obviously a race change, that does bring a bit of kind of moment to it.
It feels pretty icky.
Well, that was my original reaction. When I first saw that, I was like, that seemed weird. But at the same time, I was like, is this me coming into it feeling weird because I've been told to feel weird about it? Like all the negative PR coming into this film, is that why this is blowing up? Or is it because that is a legitimate, like, is that a concerning plot point?
I just think it's strange that they decided to address it so, as you said, nose on the head. Just they go outright and address this in the plot of the film. And it works in terms of world building and the rules they set up. Yeah, you can transfer a human from one race into the shell of another race. Yeah, that's great. But really, did you have to do it in that manner?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't do anything thematically with it.
Well, so it makes plot sense in the terms of
the mechanics of the world.
The mechanics world.
Absolutely. It just feels like the movie's really bending over backwards to justify the casting, though. Like, just a really on-the-nose way. I would have preferred this film. It would still suck, but I would have preferred it if it was just Scarlett Johansson and she's called Motoko Kusanagi. I think that would have been a less offensive way to do it, honestly.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
rather than Mary Killian, Major Mary Killian.
On other levels, this film's casting was great because the whole Section 9 team was very diverse. Like the chief, he spoke in a Japanese accent. We had the dude from The Dark Knight
I think
Rises.
he actually spoke Japanese. I don't think he was in.
Sorry,
an
yeah,
accent.
sorry.
Subtitles.
Sorry, I meant Japanese with subtitles. And
All of the main characters are white.
but the Section 9 team
Technically, but only one of them, only the head guy has any screen time. Otherwise you got White Bateau, you got the white bad guy, you have white Michael Pitt. Yeah. The only sense that this movie is diverse is that they're in an Asian country and all of the main characters are white.
I understand where the controversy is coming from. It did give me some pause during the film. I don't know that it I don't know where I can't quite sit on it. It didn't ruin the film for me, at the very least.
I think all the controversy about this film is ultimately a bit pointless because this is just another nothing movie. Like, I'll keep making the RoboCop comparison. No one will remember this next year. So it just doesn't merit that much more discussion. They cast Scarlett Johansson because they wanted to make money off of this film. They're not going to make money off of this film. They never were going to make money off of this film. They should have actually just had some integrity and cast this how it should have been cast. They should have made it a Japanese story. They just shouldn't have made this movie in the first place. Anyway, moving on.
Another spoiler that kind of disappointed me was the fact that the original theme wasn't in there. I think that was a big mistake.
The original theme music, yeah. Should have just used it.
Yeah, we were talking about the other week on Top 8 how, they did that promo with the original theme and the shelling scene and how awesome they're keeping the theme and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And, hey, they copped out and they didn't put it in. And I think some executive got scared and thought, hey, people are going to be weirded out by this song. I mean, that's an important ingredient into that whole film. And I thought that was just really just no gusto, no commitment.
The visuals of this movie combined with that music would have kept me happy.
Well, and you linked to us on Facebook the
live performance.
The live performance.
With the shelling sequence, the opening
Incredible.
scene.
Well,
it's beautiful.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. Get it in there.
Yeah, what I said to you, I was so disappointed when the movie started and it was just this kind of, I don't know, generic music going on during this really visually striking scene. I was like, wow, this is not what I like. Obviously, that's my own fault for falling in love with a different version of it already, but
I would be very curious to figure out why. Like, we'll never know, but I'd be so curious to figure out why that decision was made. Why they decided not to go with.
I think they would have. I reckon they would have said, "Oh, it's too alien. It's too weird."
yeah.
It's because it's a very strange theme. That's what makes it so incredible. It almost sounds like something that Bjork would do, or something. It's got just this really strange vibe, and I reckon the executives they got scared and they thought we got to do something a little more tradish in a Hollywood manner. Another spoiler
That did disappoint me. Yeah.
Another spoiler is the ending, and the whole puppet master thing. I think I really didn't do. I think the villains in general in this film were weak.
Yeah. Yes.
Weak.
Absolutely.
Again, I think that's a bit far to say that they're weak. I mean, it's a bit of a trope in almost every film that you know where the villain is within the first 10 minutes because of the setup, the music, the style that they go with. So you always knew that the CEO was going to be the bad guy at the end of the day.
Didn't have to be though.
It didn't have to be, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more originality in that aspect. But in terms of how the plot ended up, I didn't mind it. Like I thought that I liked the fact that that they knew each other beforehand. I thought that was cool. I almost liked it more than the original plot point on that because I just thought the original was so navel gazing and out there.
That's what's so beautiful about it, man. And like this one just went, oh, let's just do the generic old bullshit. When you've got a really cool property doing something different, let's tap into that. Like it's there for you to fucking get your hands stuck in there. And this ending, the puppet master, I thought was just a nothing character.
He was just some guy.
Well, he wasn't even the puppet master. I think it was different.
Yeah,
like they just went for a completely different.
Well, yeah, it was completely different than the original.
He was kind of in there replacing that puppet master character. And it was just a nothing. I didn't know what he wanted to do. It just meant nothing to me. And then the ending, what I love about the ending is something that we were talking about just before with Bato and that relationship. And he saves her at the end, essentially.
Yeah.
And in this one, he just rocks up at the end after she's defeated the spider tank. And Why? Well, just really strange decision once again.
I particularly did like that in the original, and it did add to the relationship that they had. But in terms of like, again, because I don't think we're ever going to get away from being able to compare this film. I think if we had taken the original property and converted it scene for scene and dialogue for dialogue into a live action film, I think it would be far worse than it is now. I think that people underestimate that when you change mediums like that you cannot have the same story and the same style. Like that's why I think that there's video game stories belong in video games. Hollywood films work for a reason because they sit their own medium, and you can have adaptations of each other that move across, but I think it is really hard to have a straightforward, this goes to that. I don't think that it really works the way that people would like it to work.
I definitely agree with you on all accounts of what you just said, but in the same token, if you're going to do this, there is a way to do it. And I don't think this is necessarily the way to do it. This isn't a bad film. This is just an extremely mediocre film that looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'd put it slightly above mediocre and it also has to do with the fact that I just love sci-fi, and I love worlds that are kind of quirky in that way.
And I actually think I will pop it on again. I think I will pick it up because of just the pure visual, like Weta Workshop, man. I just love that company. I love the stuff they do. And Rupert Sanders, the director, obviously has a very keen visual eye. But beyond that storytelling, the themes in this, the stuff you can tap into, they just really went and copped out.
It was trying so hard to do that. Like, it's not your memories, it's what you do. But I don't feel like the film was really tapping into that at all. They just kept telling it to us, literally.
Telling you and then not even like going anywhere with it. Just getting like 10% in there. It was just very surface level thematically.
The whole thing's very surface level. I honestly would like to see a much more straightforward adaptation of the original. Just out of curiosity, I think it would be a better result.
I would love to have that happen and see what people thought, because I have a strong suspicion that people would not enjoy this film, or would enjoy this film even less than they enjoyed this version. Just simply because I don't think that would translate over.
I just think this movie shoots itself in the foot so hard by really doing something very different than the original, but constantly evoking it and referencing it and translating scenes wholesale. It's just an odd choice because it's doing something different and I don't think as good. But then it's like, hey, remember the original film? And I'm like, yes, I do. It was really good. Stop showing it to me.
Do you know what I think? And I was thinking about this after we watched it, is that I think that's why Matrix was so successful. Because that is essentially based off the original content, but really
made a twist on it.
Yeah, made it a property of its own, evoked a lot of scenes or thematic types, but was ultimately able to create an entirely new thing that was set for that Hollywood blockbuster type medium.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting way of putting it. The Matrix is almost like a live action spiritual adaptation to Ghost in the Shell, and I would recommend that any day of the week over this one.
That's a controversial statement, George. Are you saying The Matrix is better than this adaptation of Ghost in the Shell?
Yes.
I think so.
Oh my God.
I think so.
The universally loved Matrix might have a chance.
One last thing that I just want to bring up is the chase scene in the middle of the film. This film really didn't have any action sequences. They were very just by the numbers, and I love that action sequence in the middle of the film in the aqueducts, and they go into that sort of that really shallow water amongst those Hong Kong looking apartments. And that's such a cool scene in the original. They just failed on every account to recreate that. It's not as long. The guns aren't as visceral. They really, really fucked that up. And it's there for you. You could even have done a Zack Snyder, like just copy and paste. And they didn't even do that.
Well, that's the thing. It got to the point in this movie where I was just kind of hanging out to see the next part they lift from the anime because I'm like, oh, this will be good. But every time it kind of disappointed me. You know, when she's typing with the weird, like 20 fingers, I'm like, oh, that's not as cool as the anime. And then at the end when she's ripping the thing off the tank, I'm like, yes, she's going to do that bit where she gets all muscly and her arms rip off. And I'm like, this is not as good as the original. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I almost wish that I hadn't watched the original because you two had watched the original well before I had. I kind of wish I had come to this fresh and then we could have that.
I'm glad you watched it. Yeah.
Get some culture, mate.
Oh, culture, all right.
I saw this with someone who hasn't seen the original, and they liked it less than me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they would. He was just not interested.
I mean, obviously, we have some points that we agree on. The plot was not revolutionary. It wasn't its strongest point. We all agreed that that the visuals were stunning. We all we vary on the degrees with which we think that. I think we all agree that there was a bit of controversy surrounding the film.
But as with all of these movies, it doesn't matter because this movie doesn't matter.
Boom.
I just mean all the talk leading up to it is so much more effort than this film deserves.
I think it's better than things like the Total Recall remake and the RoboCop remake, but they probably do belong in the same kind of broad.
I think they're all right there together. I think this completes the trilogy actually. And
as a random kind of thought, did you think that Total Recall was better or worse than RoboCop? Or
I like all three of these movies in a weird way. Like I
very confusing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
As a case study, you more mean like
yeah. I don't. I think all three of these movies just kind of sit in that interesting like not good movies that look really good that just kind of work as good like something on in the background.
Yeah, very second tier to the original.
Oh hell yeah.
Oh certainly yeah. Well, for the other two, yeah. not quite as convinced for this one, but I do understand keeping them in that same group.
That's it for our Ghost in the Shell review. We'll have our review for Lego Batman up on Thursday, which finally came out in our hometown of Sydney, Australia. Woohoo! And every Sunday, Top 8. That's our weekly news show. We're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. That's about it from me. Connor, thanks for being here once again.
Son of a bitch.
Benny.
See you guys.